The Arif's goal. The Arif desires the real God not for the sake of something else, and he values nothing above his knowledge of the real, and his worship of him is because he is worthy of worship, and it is a worthy way of relating himself to him. It is not out of desire for rewards or fear of chastisement. The meaning of this is that in terms of his aims, the Arif is muwahhid. He seeks only God, yet his desire of God is not on account of his gift in this world or in the hereafter. Were such to be the case, the real object of his desire would be the gifts, God being only the preliminary means by which the desired gifts are sought. In such a case, in reality, the final object of worship and desire would be one's own self, for the purpose of seeking those gifts is the pleasure of the self. However, the Arif desires whatever he desires for the sake of God. When he desires the gifts of God, he does so because they are from him and are his favors. They represent his grace and magnanimity. So while the non-Arif seeks God for the sake of his gifts, the Arif seeks the gifts of God for the sake of God. Here the question may arise: if the Arif does not seek God for the sake of anything, then why does he worship him? Is it not true that every act of worship must have a purpose? Ibn Sina's passage contains the answer. He states that the goal and motivation of the Arif's worship is one of two things. One is the inherent worthiness of the worshipped to be worshipped, meaning that one worships God simply because he is worthy of worship. It is rather like someone who, upon noticing some admirable qualities in a person or a thing, praises that person or thing. If asked what motivated him to utter such praise, or of what benefit was it to him, he will reply that he sought no benefit from his praise, but simply saw that person or thing as being genuinely deserving of praise. This is true of the praise accorded to the heroes or the champions of each and every field. The other motivation of the Arif's worship is the worthiness of worship itself. It bears intrinsic nobility, beauty of its own, for it is a connection, a tie between oneself and God. Thus, it has a worthiness of its own. There is no reason why worship should necessarily entail desire or fear. Ali alayhi salam, Ali peace be upon him, has some famous words on this subject. My God, I do not worship you in the fear of your fire, nor in desire for your paradise. But I find you worthy of worship, so I worship you. The Urafa place great importance in this issue, considering it a kind of shirk, polytheism, for one's goal in life and particularly in worship to be something other than God himself. Irfan totally rejects this kind of shirk. Many have written elegantly and subtly on the subject, and we will look at an allegory from Sa'di's Bustan, which takes the outward form of a story of Sultan Mahmud of Ghazna and his close confidant Iyaz. One with the Shah of Ghazna found fault, saying, What charm has he, the Shah's friend Iyas? A flower indeed, with neither colour nor smell. How strange of the nightingale to set its heart upon such a thing! Someone conveyed his remark to Sultan Mahmud, who, on hearing it, was beside himself with anguish. I love him for his disposition and character, nor for his pleasing gait and stature. Heard I once that in a narrow defile the king's treasure chest broke open after a camel fell. The king, after signalling his bequest, spurred on his steed to get ahead hastily. The riders now fell upon the pearls and corals, their thoughts now turning from the king to the treasure. None of the proud lads remained that day to follow in the king's train except Iyas. Looking out, the king saw him, and beholding Iyas, his face like a flower bloomed with delight. "What booty have you brought along?" the king inquired. "None," said Iyas. "I hurried after you, preferring your services to treasure and bounties." Sa'di then turns from the story to the point he wishes to make, which he expresses thus: If you look to your friend for his favours, you are tied to yourself, not to your friend. A breach of the way it was of the saints, desired of God aught other than God. The first station. The first level of the Arif's journey is what they call resolution, al-irada, and this is a fervent desire to catch hold of the firm tie, al-urwat al-wuthqa, that catches hold of one who is receptive of true proofs, and who has settled himself through the covenant of faith, so that it impels his heart towards the holy, in order to attain the spirit of connection with him. In order to explain the first stage of the spiritual path, which in one respect potentially embraces the whole of Irfan, we are obliged to be somewhat elaborate. The Urafa primarily believe in a principle which they sum up in the following phrase: the ends are the return to the beginnings. Clearly, for the end to be the beginning, there are two possibilities. One is that the movement is in a straight line, and that once the object in motion reaches a certain point, it changes its direction and retraces exactly the same route that it came. In philosophy, it has been proved that such a change of direction would entail an interval of motionlessness, even if imperceptible. Furthermore, these two movements would be opposite to each other. The second possibility is that the movement is along a curve, all of whose points are equidistant from a certain central point. In other words, a circle. It is clear that if the movement takes the form of a circle, naturally the path will end at the point of commencement. An object moving in a circle will continually move farther from the point of beginning, until it reaches the point farthest from where it began. This is the point diametrically opposite to the point of commencement. It is also from this point that, no pause or interval, the return journey, ma'ad, to the point of departure, mabda, commences. The Urafa call the first part of the journey, that is, from the point of departure to the point farthest from it, the arc of descent, Qaus al-Nuzul. and the journey from there back to the point of departure, the arc of ascent, Qaus al-Su'ud. There is a philosophical view associated with the movement of things from the point of departure to the farthest point, which the philosophers call the principle of causality, Asal al-Aliyah, and which the Urfa call the principle of emanation, Asal al-Tajalli. In either case, objects traveling along the arc of descent are as if driven from behind. Similarly, the movement of objects from the farthest point to the point of departure also has its own philosophical theory. This is the principle of every derivative, being's desire and passion, to return to its origin. In other words, it is the principle of the flight back of everything estranged and stranded to its origin and homeland. This tendency, so the Urfa believe, is inherent in each and every particle of existence, including the human being, though in man it can often be latent and hidden. Man's preoccupations prevent the activity of this tendency, and a series of stimuli are required before this inner inclination will surface. It is the appearance and surfacing of this inclination that the Urfa term as resolution or will, irada. Thus, in reality, this resolution is a type of awakening of a dormant consciousness. Abdul Razzaq Kashani in his Istilahat defines irada as a spark in the heart from the fire of love that compels one to answer the summons of the real, Haqiqa. Khwaja Abdullah Ansari in his Manazil al-Sa'irin defines irada as follows: it is the voluntary answer in actions to the summons of the real Haqiqa. Here it is necessary to point out that the meaning of irada being the first stage is that it is the first stage after a chain of other stages has been passed, stages that are called preparations, bidayat, doors, abwab, conduct, mu'amalat, and manners, akhlaq. Thus, irada is the first stage in the terminology of the Urfa in the sense that it signifies a genuine Gnostic awakening. Rumi describes the principle that the end is the return to the beginning as follows: the parts are faced towards the whole. Nightingales are in love with the rose's face. Whatever comes from the sea to the sea returns, and everything goes back to its source. Like the streams rushing down from mountain tops, my soul, burning with love, longs to leave the body. Rumi opens his Mathnawi by inviting the reader to listen to the plaintive cries of the reed, as it complains of its separation from the reed bed. Thus, in the first line of his Mathnawi, Rumi is actually bringing up the first stage of the Arif, that is irada, a desire to return to one's origins, that is accompanied with the feeling of separation and loneliness. Rumi says, listen to the reed as its story it relates, and of its separation it complains. Since the time that from the reed bed was I taken, at my strains have lamented man and woman. Oh, a heart I seek that is torn with the pain of separation, that it may hear the tale of my longing for return. Whoever remains distant from his origins seeks again the life of reunion. To sum up, Ibn Sina in the above passage means that Irada is a desire and longing that, after deep feelings of alienation, loneliness, and estrangement, makes its appearance in the human being and motivates him to seek reunion with the real. A union which puts an end to the feelings of alienation, loneliness, and helplessness.